Hello everyone and welcome back to Law Statistics. Today we will be discussing about a historical evaluation of contract law in India. Let us start with the introduction. Contract Act is one of the principal act governing all the contractual relations, not only in the business world but also from day-to-day life. It is one of the most important legislation ever drafted by Britishers, and the principles enacted therein are nothing but the codification of the general principles governing transactional relationship, because of which it has seen seldom amendments. The basic principle of a contracts law remained the same throughout the world, only certain technicalities remain different. Before the act was enacted, the contractual relationship was governed by the personal laws of a different religious communities, like different laws for a Hindus and a Muslim. Also at that time, Britishers had their own law to govern too, but because of the presence of so many divergent laws, it created confusion in implementation of the contract. And in case of if any dispute arises between the parties, so it to promote a business transactions, a contract act was enacted to make business transactions more convenient. Now, to understand the contract act, it in its present form, we have to analyze the historical evaluation of a contract law, taking into account the practices that were prevalent before the enactment come into practice. We shall be mainly analyze the Rome period to under common law principle, Muslim period, Hindu period, and British regime, and the present enactments. Mainly, we have two parts here. The first one is evaluation of a contract law in different time periods, like a Roman period, Mohammedan period, and Hindu period. And the second part covers the advent of the Indian Contract Act. First, we have to discuss about a part 1, evaluation of a contract law in a different time periods. First, we have to discuss the Roman period. Yes, the earliest common law principle to contract law can be traced back during the Roman Empire, where 12 tables were the law. At that time exist 5 types of a contract governing contractual relationship, which were: first one, ius random. It is derived from random, which indicate that Jupiter was the god which people generally saw. As per this contract, the promisor has to call upon the god to declare verbally that he will bind by the rules of the contract, and if he violates it, he shall be punished. The sanctions imposed on the promisor include withdrawal of a divine protection, which means any person can kill him. Second one, sponsio. This form of a contract was similar to that of the previous one, but was a different in regard to stages in which period in which the contract was developed. And third one, nexum. This is mainly related to loans and sales. In a loans agreement, the borrower has to declare himself indebted to the other party for the sum he is taking as a loan. In the sales agreement, the sale can take place only in the presence of 5 people, and the amount to be paid is decided by the official payers. In case there is a breach of a contract, the creditor has the option to invoke any of a violent measures as inscribed in the law. It's a debt bondage contract which was abolished by the Lex Papiria in 326 BC. Fourth one is Dotis Diksho. This was related to dowry agreement between a bride and a groom. We already studied Mohammedan law here and also Hindu law. At the marriage time, dowry is a very important concept. Here in this contract, the father of the bride or the bride herself set forth the amount and nature of a dowry to be governed to the groom, and it is declared in the presence of the groom. Since this was a social agreement, there wasn't any punishment in case of a breach of a contract. The only remedy that the groom family has in case of a breach is to compel the bride's family in fulfilling the contract. And next we have to discuss the second period, that is a Mohammedan period. In India, during the British regime, the two prevalent religions having a separate personal laws were a Hindus and a Muslim, and each had a separate idea as to what constitute a contractual agreement and when shall breach takes place and what were the sanctions. Mohammedans followed Islamic laws which are considered as the divine origin and are believed as the relations of the God, means Allah. According to Islamic law, every aspect of their civil law involves around the contracts, like their contract of marriage or their contract of the inheritance of the property. The source of a Islamic contract law is Surah Al-Maida Aish. And the word contract is Arabic is akad, which means conjunction. It denotes the conjunction of the proposal. Proposal means here isba and acceptance means kabul. The basic principle which the law governed was that there should be a presence of two parties. One should make the offer and other should accept it, and both must agree to the same thing in the same sense, and the object of the contract should be produce a legal valid result. And transaction related to any matter was treated as a secular contracts, and a provisions for there to settle the disputes to every type of a contracts, even a property and a succession. The unlawful transactions were considered void from the beginning under Muslim laws. These types of a transaction were divided into two categories under Muslim law. The unlawful transactions were considered void from the beginning under Muslim law. These types of transactions were divided into two categories under the Muslim law. Here, another type of a transaction that was prohibited under Muslim laws, and the same stance was taken under the Indian Contract Act, where the contract related to gambling, contingent contract or a wagering contract. We already know that what is the meaning of contingent and a wagering contracts. If any contracts contains any contingency or any wagering, those contracts are to be void. The formation of a contract according to Islamic law doesn't require any kind of a formalities. The only requirement is that the express consent of both parties. The proposal and the acceptance must be made of the same thing in the same sense. Furthermore, the Islamic law classifies as per their special features, and following are the types of contracts. First one, alienation of a property. For an exchange like a sale or without a exchange like a giving a simple gift, and to create succession, namely bequest. Second one, alienation of a usufruct. In exchange of a property, namely Isra, where the movable and immovable things are given for hire. Contracts for a giving service like carriage for a goods, safe custody of a property, not being in exchange of a property like an accommodate, loan and a deposit. Islamic laws provide two modes for invalidation of a contracts. First is the right of either party to decide to rescind the contract unilaterally without any legal cause. And the second one is to terminate the contract on the ground of frustration. And we have some grounds of a dissolution of contracts are as follows. First one, invalidation by a mutual agreement. It means with the consent of two parties, invalidating that a contract is also one type or a ground of a dissolution of a contract. Second one, cancellation of the contract by the death of either party or destruction of a subject matter or expiry of the time period. So, cancellation of a contract by death of the either party, if any one party died, in that situation contracts comes to end, means that is also one ground of a dissolution. And in case of a destruction of a subject matter, and that subject matter is not in existence, on that situation also contract become a invalid. And third one, cancellation by termination by either party. If any one party cancel the contract, on that situation also contract comes to end. And fourth one, dissolution by the termination of the contract. So completing a contract, this is also one ground of a dissolution. And we move to Hindu law. The jurisprudential aspects of a Hindu law is fundamentally different from that of English law's jurisprudence. Hindu law is the result of the compilation of numerous customs and works of Tikras, who interpreted and analyzed Vedas to develop the various aspects of a Hindu law. The Hindu law dealt with the contract law through titles. Manusmriti is regarding the contract law dealt with the incompetence to enter in contract. It laid down the principle which is allows followed in the Indian Contract Act states that a contract entered by a minor or intoxicated person or an old man or cripple is not a valid contract. As if any contract want to become a valid, it has to complete some requirements. Contracts entered by a minor or an intoxicated person or an old man, these are not a valid contracts. The famous India philosopher Kautilya added to the list of disqualified persons who are not allowed to enter into the contract, and including a contract between husband and wife or between parents and a son or between brothers and a brother and sisters or between slave and hired labor. Manu also dealt with the fraudulent aspects of the contract, and it stated that any contract dealing with a mortgage, sale, fraudulent gift, or any contract which is motivated with the fraudulent aspects shall be declared null and void. Yes, if any contracts come into force with the intent to fraud another person or a society, those contracts are declared null and void. Also, he held that any consent given for any transaction under the pressure of a threat or a coercion shall also be declared void. If any contract come into force with taking the consent of the person or a parties to threatening or a coercion, giving a pressure that to be declared wide. And lastly, we have to move to British regime. Britishers come to India around 1600 and they started running India through the medium of laws and different regulations. By the Regulating Act of 1773, the Supreme Court of Judicature was founded in Calcutta, replacing the Mayor's Court and as the highest court of the British India from 1774 to 1862. Till the time Till the time High Court of Calcutta was established under Indian High Courts Act. Now, before the advent of Indian Contract Act, the English law was applied in the president towns of Madras, Bombay and Calcutta under the Charter of 1726 issued by King George I to the East India Company. Now, with the indiscriminate application of English law in governing the contracts formed as per their personal laws, that it formed quite convenience to govern the jurial relationship. So, to remove the legal barriers, the Settlement Act of 1781, as passed by just provided that matters concerning the inheritance, succession, and contracts between the parties in the case of Hindu and Muslims were to be followed their respective personal laws. But in case where one of the party is from either of the relation, like if one party is a Hindu and other is a Muslim, then in that case the law of the defendant is to be used. This was followed in the presidency towns, but in sites outside the presidency towns the matter was governed by justice, equity and good consciousness. This procedure was followed until the same time the Indian Contract Act was implemented in India. And we move to second part. So second part consists with the advent of the Indian Contract Act. The Indian Contract Act as applied today was drafted originally by the Third India Law Commission in the year of 1861 in England. The Indian Contract Bill tried to define the laws regulating to contracts, sale of movable properties, indemnity, guarantee, agency, partnership and bailment. The act came into effect in 1872, but soon afterwards amendments were made in that regard, which repealed section 76 to 123 dealing with the Sale of Goods Act, and separated legislation were enacted called the Sale of Goods Act 1930 to govern that area. Also, section 239 to 266 dealing with the partnership was repealed and new legislation was enacted called Indian Partnership Act 1932. Let us conclude the topic. By analyzing the development of the contract through different time periods, ranging from a Roman law to Muslim law to Hindu law, and then to legal sanctions in a British regime, it can be concluded that though the technicality and the modes and means of punishment may vary, even the applicability of the law may vary, but the underlying principle of all the laws remain the same. The minor cannot contract, consent should be given by both parties for the same manner and same sense, and that certain person is disqualified from contracting, like a intoxicated old person cannot contract. It can be further concluded that Britishers tried to codify the law to bring in uniformity but they also tried to incorporate the personal laws of the different religious groups unless they are in a contrary to the main law, as they realized that underlying principle for a personal law is similar that of the contract act. So it can be said that through different time period the contract law has been amended and interpreted in a different ways in a different communities, but general principle unchanged, and no attempt has been to change it. Thank you for watching the video, and please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you'll never miss an update.